Hello, and welcome to the Storied Human. I'm Lynn Thompson, and today my guest is Whitney Ellis. She was a successful producer before she realized she could help women realize their worth. She's now a money life coach. Her story is inspirational, and so is her work. She found she was burnt out by the demands of her job, but she realized that she did enjoy part of it, asking people powerful questions and having hearing their stories, which I loved that she told me she talked to all kinds of people and she's done so many interviews over the years. She realized that those skills would transfer. So let's hear more about how she did this. And it's a really great story. And I want to welcome you, Whitney. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you so much for letting me be here and share my story.
From the first moment you told me that you used to be, that's a pretty cool job. Like, you used to be a producer in New York, and now you're, a money life coach. That's a big switch. And I always want to know how people do that.
Yeah, it's so interesting, when people ask me what I did for a living and I said TV producer, people were always like, "Oh my gosh, that is so cool."
It is, yeah.
Yeah, oh, what shows, did you work on? And I always would find at least one show that they knew I worked on. So I knew I wanted to be in film and TV production at a younger age. I did photography and it ultimately led to filmmaking. And then I found work in New York City working in TV. And, I had a 12-year career in television and it took me all over the world. I got to interview all types of people from, a gangbanger to a zookeeper to, an expert, like a CIA agent or FBI agent. So it gave me this incredible ability to not only go experience the world, but be able to have one-on-one interviews with these interesting people who had incredible stories to share. And that was the part I loved about my job, was being able to ask powerful questions and hear people's stories. And one thing I found was that um, I often was interviewing people about really sometimes tragic things that happened to them. And I would notice that in our 2-hour interview, they would like have almost like this healing experience by just having somebody in front of them willing to listen to their story and actively listen and ask them questions. And by the end of our 2-hour interview, something would shift in them. And I would think, oh my gosh, this is something special. But the thing was, we were doing it for television, right? So my objective was always, okay, get the good stuff so that it can go on TV. And, as I began to work more in my career, I started realizing what actually motivated me was helping people, like in a really real, practical way. And that wasn't really what I was doing with my job in a way that I would have liked. And so I started wondering, well, how can I really help people? And I want to look back on my life and be proud of something that I did. And I enjoyed my career, but it was a very tough job. I mean, I'm working 12-hour days. You kind of like work-life balance is a non-existent thing. I'm sure a lot of people can identify with that. I was always traveling and it wears on your body. And ultimately, I just started feeling like there's got to be more than this. And what ended up happening was over the 12-year period, I climbed to the top. I went from, being a production assistant, which is like getting coffee for the big boys and girls up there, the executive producers, to actually becoming the executive producer that somebody was getting coffee for.
Wow.
So yeah,
That's a quick rise, actually, right? That's pretty quick. I can't resist. Can you tell us some of the shows that you worked on? I know people want to know.
Yeah, sure. So I did a lot of unscripted television. So things like the one of my favorite shows I worked on was called The Zoo. It was on Animal Planet where we filmed at the Bronx Zoo. So that was a super
Oh,
fun job. Um, Many people know of John Walsh, the guy who was on America's Most Wanted, who, used
yeah.
to be like, let's catch these dirt bags, after the cops back in the 90s. Well, him and his son started a new show called In Pursuit with John Walsh. So I worked on things like that, a lot of true crime. I also worked on this incredible show on the Travel Channel called Mysteries at the Museum, and I gotta go. I went over to over 100 museums all over the country for that job.
Wow.
So it was very cool. But I say this as
Yeah,
a caveat, production work is a grind. It
it
is,
is. Yeah.
there's hustle culture. You have to say yes. If you have boundaries, people are a little put off. As I grew in my career, I began to start to put my foot down and
Yeah.
say, I have boundaries. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. But there's sort of this culture of hustle, hustle, hustle. Your personal life doesn't matter. You give to this show, you
Yeah.
give to this production. And
And kind of you're lucky to be here, right? You're lucky to be
yeah,
here. And it is a big deal. I mean, you were lucky to have such a cool, I mean, you worked hard and you were lucky to have such a great career. You're reminding me so much of my friend Sandy Cohen. She worked as a celebrity journalist for 12 years for LA, for actually just for the what do you call that? Just the AP. And
yeah,
so she would get called in the middle of the night. So and so's getting a divorce. Can you get on it? Like that was a big deal, right? You had to document that so and so was getting a divorce. And she got to go to the Oscars every year. That was fun. But over time, same thing, 12 years. Over
yeah,
time, it was like, this is not enough. I think your heart starts to call out for something deeper.
yeah,
And I just love that you noticed. I love that you started to notice people are changing when I interview them. There's something that's happening. And that's what I love about what you do. I knew that the minute I met you is that you really listen to people, which is rare. Even people
mm,
that interview don't always listen. They have like a script, they follow up, right? They're not really there in the moment. And I think you were starting to notice that, you have more to give in another way.
a
I
hundred
think it's
percent.
so cool that you started to notice that. And I think we just kind of mature, and what we want in our 20s is not what we want in our 30s. There's like a really cool change, I think, when we come out of our 20s. I notice most people, they kind of figure out who they are in their early 30s. They just sort of say, wait a minute. And that's what happened to Sandy, and that's what happened to you.
Yeah, I would say a real shift happened into me like the over the last couple years of my career. I remember specifically that, well, one, I had gone all the way to the top and I was making pretty good money, and people would be like, "You're so lucky, you're living your best life, you're living the dream." And I always thought, "Oh my gosh, I don't feel that way at all. This
Aw,
can't be my dream. I know that I'm meant to do so much more. This can't be it." And so I would almost feel guilty when people would be like, "Well, aren't you lucky?" And I would
yeah,
just, so there was some part of me deep inside that knew I had a bigger purpose than just to produce hours of television.
yeah.
And then a couple things happened. One thing that happened was I got diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, a couple years back, and I had this very uncouth doctor, this doctor who had no tableside manner, or whatever you call that, bedside manner. She actually left me a voicemail to tell me that I had been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. And I was actually on set working a job. And I remember listening to the voicemail, and it said, you have this autoimmune disease. It's called Hashimoto's. It's pretty much incurable, and you have to live with it
That's
for
what
the
I
rest.
have.
Oh,
I have it
yes.
too. A lot of us have it. Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah. And I remember thinking, so not only has my job I believe, made me sick, but here I am working this job, finding this out, and I think that was a real eye opener for me because I always felt overworked and I was constantly living off of coffee and just not taking care of myself in that way. So I wasn't surprised. So I felt that that was a big moment for me. Like, okay, your health is being affected by how you're working, that hustle. And then I, you know, started to think about, well, what's my mission? What do I want to leave behind in this world? And I knew that it wasn't making TV. And then I hit a rock bottom. I had one of those moments where I had like the worst production day of my life where everything went wrong. And this guy who I was supposed to interview made me cry. It was just like
Aw,
so bad. It was just like the worst production day of my 12-year career. I've handled so much. There was a hurricane coming, like sirens going. It was crazy. It was just like one of those days where everything went wrong. And I remember I was sitting in a hotel room crying because I felt stuck in a career on a path that I didn't know how to pivot. And I was like, well, what's the plan here? And I just like literally said to the universe, God, spirit, whatever you want to call it, I said, I feel stuck and I don't want to feel this way. How do I change? How do I get out of this? How do I shift careers? How do I do something that feels right for me? And that was the moment there I was like, okay, I'm going to change my life right now. I don't know, I didn't know where I was going yet, but I knew. And I actually went and took a picture of myself and I held up the number one, that this was day number one of my new life, whatever it was. I just didn't want it to keep being TV producing for 12 years, for 12 hours a day, making TV. I knew I wanted it to be something significant. So,
I just love that you listened to that, because a lot of people
mm,
do keep going. But I also
100%.
think sometimes like the worst day and the Hashimoto's, it kind of wakes you up too. It's like you're ready to change, but then you get pushed a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. You get pushed. The universe, funnily enough, heard my cry. And then something extraordinary happened. I not only did I quit, so I quit within 2 weeks. I said, I'm not doing this anymore.
Oh, I love that.
And then a water pipe burst in our apartment and destroyed
Ooh,
everything. We woke up and it destroyed everything. And
my
so
God.
suddenly I was like, not only did I just quit a 12-year career, but literally our life had been like wiped away by a single bursted water pipe in winter. And everything went in storage. We suddenly were moved out, not living in New
Oh
York
my
City
God.
anymore. And it's so funny because that month was one of the hardest months of my life. And it was like the universe was like, okay, I heard you. You don't want to be stuck anymore.
Oh my God. I
So
just
that's
heard something that said something. Oh my God, so similar to this. It's like you can ask for something, but you don't know how it's going to happen. And that's horrifying, really, when you think about what you had to go through, but it got you out of New York. That's
it's
when you look back, you're like, that
wild.
was horrible, but it got me out of New York. And the thing that I can't help but think is you were flooded, and like water and rain and flooding is emotion. It's like burst emotion, like symbolically. Like that's so intense that that happened to you. And I
Yeah.
can't even imagine going through that. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't ugh, easy
It was
coming back from that. But
Oh, it was the hardest month, one of the hardest months of my life. And it's so funny, be careful what you wish for, right? Because I felt like now I look back on it and I'm like telling the universe, please help me be unstuck. And then a flood literally wiped my life away. And
it's
then everything
just
I
so,
owned was in
so powerful. I can't
was in
believe it.
s- yeah, was in storage. And then I started searching for like, okay, it's wild because it gave me permission to have a clean slate.
Yeah, I can see that, right? Like you have no choice, right? You got to just start over.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And I said, okay, what is it I want to do? And I actually had a mentor who really helped guide me a little bit. And she said, you ever thought about life coaching? And I said, well, what the heck is life coaching? That sounds ridiculous. And as soon as I learned about it, I was like, oh, you ask people powerful questions and you
Do
listen
what
to
you
their
did, right?
story.
But you're
And
allowed to keep doing it, right? You don't have to pick the choice bits for TV.
yeah, and you really help people with their life and their transitions. And it was interesting because I was going through my own transitions. So what I really love doing is helping people who are ready to shift
Yeah.
careers, who maybe had a catalytic event happen to them, maybe they got a divorce, maybe something, they got laid off and they're ready to go and do something amazing. So it's cool because I've used my experiences to help other people transition through that and to find their purpose. And ultimately I began to find clues. The universe sort of left me little pieces of, okay, go this direction. And I just keep pivoting. And actually, that day that I was in the hotel room crying and said, I'm, stuck, I think was the day that I said, from this point forward, I'm going to listen to my intuition and my inner knowing and make all my decisions based on that and not my fear anymore. Because for most of my life, I had made decisions 100% based on fear. Fear was in the driver's seat. It was driving my life. I was afraid to not have enough money. I was afraid to say no. I was afraid of what could happen. And yet I was miserable. So I decided it was time to shift and actually get quiet enough, start listening to my inner knowing, and literally make my decisions based on that, even if I was scared.
That's so powerful. And I think we can so relate to it. Most of us, right? Fear is always driving a lot of us, and we have to really become aware of it. I mean, it's why they sell deodorant, right? You're so afraid you're going to smell bad. It's why they sell makeup and deodorant and,
Mm,
just this fear of not fitting in or not smelling good or not looking good. And they manipulate that. Advertisers know how to manipulate that. And so it's just woven in our world. And women especially, I think, are fearful. We're I felt like my I was raised way back and my parents were like always protective, more protective of me. And I feel like a lot of women, internalize that fear. It's like, oh, well,
uh,
I can't do stuff. I have to be safe. And so we don't step out into the world. We don't do that. We hold ourselves back. Or like the money thing too is such a fear thing, right? Oh, I can't quit my job. I need, we settle for that mediocrity because it's safe. So I just
mhm,
think it's wonderful that I love when people use what happened to them to help
mhm.
others. And that's part of why I do the podcast, because I remember saying to people, you go through things. What's the point if you can't share it and people can't, and have people learn from it? So our stories are so precious to me. Everybody that tells me a story, I learn something, and then I never know who's going to hear it and learn something too. Like, really, what is the point, right? We're all here together going through stuff. I just love that you trusted your instincts, though, that you decided, I'm going to trust these instincts, my heart. You followed your heart, and you trusted the signs and the clues that the universe was sending, which I believe in wholeheartedly, because people keep telling me that. Like, that's what people keep telling me is what happened in their life. And it's kind of magical.
100%. I would say that, a lot of us let fear guide us, but I think women, especially, not to discount men in this, but I think we are given the gift of superpower of intuition. And I think for a lot of
Yeah.
our lives, we're taught not to listen to it or use
Oh yeah.
it. And I have now realized that, and this is one thing I teach as a coach, is that your inner knowing, your body inside of you, it knows the answer. You just simply, it's your compass. It's your North Star. It is what's leading you in the direction that you want to go. You simply must listen to it and just step into it and have faith and trust it. But I'm not going to lie to you, even in trusting my North Star or following my inner compass or, my intuition, it's still scary and things don't always go the way I expect, but
Right.
it feels more empowering now to know that I am going in towards my destiny. I'm my own destiny. My destiny is unfolding. And it was even with the 12-year career. It led me
Yeah.
to this point. So I'm not
Yeah.
discounting my past, but you know, I think if I could tell any woman out there anything, it would be trust your inner knowing. It knows what to do and trust it, have faith and just step forward
I think
and
that's lovely and so important, because we're not taught that when we're young. We're not taught that. I know I grew up like, oh, so and so started their own business, but now they're in the poorhouse, or oh, it's too risky, or just all these things about
Mm.
venturing out. And so it kind of makes you afraid, and it makes you too cautious. And we're not taught to just say, well, what is your inner self saying? What is your heart saying? And
Yeah.
everyone's different. And it's funny about the intuition too, because I always knew I was kind of intuitive, but now that I'm really looking at it, I'm I think a lot of us are very intuitive and we just don't even realize it. Like sometimes I was saying to someone, I'll say something to a friend, I'll ask a question or I'll say something, and it's exactly what they needed to bring up what they need to bring up. And I don't even know I'm doing it. So I think a lot of times, if you get in touch with that intuition, you'll realize, oh, it's there already. I'm just not, oh, fully conscious that I'm doing it.
Yeah. I was going to say, as I sort of started to listen to my intuition more and realize that life coaching was a part of my future, and it was such a surprise. Actually, I originally wanted to be a psychologist. So I had all these, I mean, I have almost enough credits to be a psychologist, from college. And so it's crazy. It combined all these like elements of, I asking powerful questions for my TV job and psychology and supporting people and really helping people. And so it's exciting to watch people like transform their lives and like in front of me and to be able to support them. And one of the things I recognized is that I wanted to make my messes my message. And so for me, I knew that I wanted to specifically coach on money because I had made a lot of money mistakes throughout my, young life from my 20s into my 30s. And I knew that I wanted to help take what I learned and help other women because at the end of the day, you can listen to your intuition, but if you can't afford to support your dreams, or ask for the money or get capital or, then you will have a challenge. So for me, I love teaching not only to listen to your intuition, but how do we get the means and the funds to support you through that journey?
I love the practicality of that. And we all need that. And I just love that you combine those things. It's funny that you said you wanted to be a psychologist because when you were talking about the changes you saw when you were a producer and interviewing people and how from the beginning to the end of the interview it was different. And I see how you listen to people. It's not a surprise. Like I thought, oh, she's like a therapist. She's like, you really are. You have that. It explains a lot about how you want to help people because that's always been there. You want to help heal people. It's your thing. It's like, and so you're getting closer to who you really are. But I also love that you're helping us with money because who doesn't need help with money? We're all raised differently, and
Yeah.
and our parents didn't really know what they were doing. A lot of our parents didn't know what they were doing, and they imprinted us with these things about money. Money is the root of all evil and that kind of thing. And very weird.
Yeah, I
So
would
you're
say.
taking it all on.
Yeah, I mean, we carry with us a lot of thoughts about money that originated from our parents. And so, part of what I do as a money life coach specifically is I help with mindset because that is 80% of it is your mindset, what you're thinking, what you're believing about money, about your ability to access money, about your ability to create money and handle money. A lot of women and society in general, the belief that women or girls are bad at math, they're bad at money, they're bad at numbers. I mean, I have literally people come in and say, I'm bad at money. I don't know. I'm not even good at
Oh,
looking at numbers, right? So there's a sort of societal belief that if you're female, you're not as good at finances. And the truth is we get a lot of our financial advice or insights from men. There needs to be more women who are speaking openly about money. Also, we have beliefs, like I said, from our parents. Part of my job as a money life coach is to help you heal some of that and recognize how that is holding you back. But I'm also somebody who supports forward thinking. What are some strategies you can do? What are new thoughts you can think? How can you rewire your brain to see abundance around you, to begin to bring wealth into your life? And also just actual strategies like money is a skill. Anybody can learn it. So it's just a matter of learning it. And so what I do is I use all my money messes and mistakes, and I have come up with lessons and disciplines to help people
I
from the
love that.
bottom all the way up to the top. And
It's a skill. I love that you said that. It's neutral, right? It's a skill. And
yeah,
so
and
if you can get to that place where you're just going to use it, you know, s- in a neutral, clear way instead of bringing all this garbage. I know we all have some baggage that we bring to it. I love that.
yeah,
Yeah,
before we got on this interview, you said that money is neutral, and I think that's one thing that we should be sharing with whoever's listening here is to just remind them that money is neutral. I know it sounds
right.
scary, like when you look at your bank account and maybe you have $34 in there, and you're like, "Oh my gosh," right? You could give yourself meaning to that. Holy smokes, I only have $34 in here, and you could be terrified. You could feel a lot of things and have a lot of thoughts. Somebody else could look at it and just see the number 34,
Right.
or somebody else could look at it and be like, oh my gosh, I have $34. That's a lot of money. So it's really incredible that we're the ones who bring meaning to money. And I actually am somebody who doesn't believe debt is necessarily the worst thing in the world. Now, I believe that if you're using debt to leverage your business or to help you bring more income, that's amazing. But
Oh, yeah.
again, if you have debt, let's say your net worth is negative $80,000, at the end of the day, that's just a number. What do you want to do about it? You know what I mean? and just
Oh, I like
reminding
that.
you, like,
Yes.
it's just a number and it's just your present moment. It doesn't mean it's going to be your future.
Oh, I love that. So you just sort of disentangle from the feeling, because I know there's a lot of shame when people carry debt. It's like, I'm a failure. I have this debt. So there's that shame. You don't want to. I know Debbie talks about that. Debbie Weiss talks about her financial difficulties in her past very honestly in her book. And she says, um, the shame kept me from revealing it. It was something I carried and something that was a secret. And I think that just makes everything worse when we're secretive about it.
Oh, 100%. So actually how I started to realize I wanted to help with money was the shame actually, because I was carrying it with me for so long. And then I started to write it down in a journal. And then I started thinking, well, what if I actually shared my messes with people so they felt less alone? So I began to start telling my story, like in public speaking,
So good.
and people would come up to me and be like, oh my gosh, I know exactly what that's like. And you just reminded me of a story where the money shame, well, where I became first aware of the impact of money. I think we all have these moments in our life, money moments where we never forget. Like, and it was I was a little kid and it was my first time that I became really aware of the power of money. So just to give you a little story, my mother and my family, when I was growing up, we grew up in Dallas, Texas, very nice, in a nice ranch house, you know, 4 bedroom house. We had nice Christmases. It was just like we just lived a normal middle class life. And then my mother decided she wanted to divorce my dad. And I was in like
Wow.
fifth grade. And I'm not going to go into all of it, but we lived in a very dangerous household. And so my mother was essentially like trying to flee from my father, to protect us, children, and herself. And she put money secretly in a separate bank account, savings, and she was like, we have to get out of here. We have to like secretly leave.
Oh,
And
that must have been so hard.
it was really terrifying. And
And you
we
were so young.
I was young. I was in fifth grade, and I remember helping her pack. The movers were there. We were putting all our stuff away, and she had saved enough money for us to be able to leave. And we did. And I remember us driving off, and I was like looked in the rear view, back behind me at our house. And little did I know that was going to be the end of my secure middle class existence.
Oh,
It was
yes.
suddenly like we went from a 2 income family, right? My mom and my dad, who were able to maintain that lifestyle. And then my mom leaves my dad and she becomes a single mother who's supporting 2 kids. And suddenly poor. We were broke. It was it felt like it happened overnight, really. And my mother just really struggled. But see, the thing was, I look back on it, she was willing to pay the price, like for her freedom, for our protection. And it was such a brave thing she did that day. But it did cost her something, right? And
Yeah.
I remember we lived in this little rental house that had like no furniture in it. And people from the church would like have to bring us food because we didn't have enough food. And suddenly I was like, okay, so our life has really suddenly shifted. And a memory I have when I first felt money shame was I remember we went to the grocery store and we filled up the cart full of food. We pulled up, the cashier runs it, and I don't remember what form of payment it was. All I know is it got rejected. And they were like, yeah, ma'am, I'm so sorry, but your payment is no good here. And then the manager came over to try to fix it. And unfortunately, whatever the situation was, it wasn't working. She couldn't pay for the groceries. And I remember we had to walk away, like leave the groceries behind. And that was the first time I knew, okay, so money can just not be there for you.
Whoa. And there's some stuff to unpack in there too that always upsets me when I think about how dependent, even though your mother worked, she was dependent on your father, and
Hmm.
she had to make that huge decision for all of you and pay the price because, we're raised, at least back then, women were raised to, you get married and you either stay at home or you work. A lot of women stayed at home and put their eggs in that basket. And then if things don't work out, it's just crazy, right? That's built into our society. Even now, I know, I was just talking to my husband. I know a few women who had their lives blown up by divorces because they chose to stay home and take care of their children, and it didn't work out. So it's just so difficult for me to hear this story and for you to learn that lesson so young, that it was so hard for your mother, that it shouldn't disturbing that the structure's still there, that we're raised. It's upsetting to see the price that she had to pay, and that you had to have that realization so young.
So my mother actually was a career woman. She made more money than my dad. But that wasn't the issue. I found out later she was paying for two houses. She had to pay for the mortgage of the other house while our rental house. It was like
My God,
it was a nasty divorce. I don't know
what
all
a
the details.
nightmare.
So
Oh my
I was very shielded from like what was actually going on. But so she was paying for two homes. I still look back on that and like, how did my mom do all this?
How did she? Yeah,
Yeah,
and she should have just
superwoman.
kicked your dad out, but I guess he wouldn't go.
Yeah, I don't want to go too far into that, but we had to leave sort
Yeah,
of in
I'm
a,
so sorry.
the
No,
veil in a,
that's
but
just that's hell. But your mother was amazing, is amazing. She really did some amazing superhero stuff.
and I look back at that and I realize, and I've been thinking more about like, why do I like what I do or love what I do? And I thought, oh, my mom had enough savings to be able to leap and do
There you go.
something. And I realized the ability for women to have access to money, to save money, to have a safety net, to have the means to fund their dreams or leave a situation or make a shift, that is so vitally important. Like women feeling empowered with money and their
Yep,
ability to make choices. It expands your choices. That's
it
really
does.
where,
It
you
does.
know, modern
It
day
does.
equality comes with economic equality for women.
Yeah.
Really. So
That's so powerful that you look back and understand that your mother was, able to fund her own
she changed
escape
our
for you
lives.
guys. Yeah, that she had the guts and the ability. That's pretty amazing. And so, yeah, it's really important. I remember reading some statistics, and I should have known this, but I was shocked. The sooner a woman gets married and the sooner she has a baby, the worse her economic outcomes are. And if she just waits a little bit and gets an education, it's just night and day, where she is like 5, 10 years down the road. I wish we could teach young girls even more strongly, like this is worth doing. Don't get all caught up in I'm in love and I'm going to get married. If you just wait a little bit and take care of yourself, your economic future is so much stronger. Like,
Yeah.
duh. I remember reading it and saying, there it is in black and white, but my God, I didn't realize it was that drastic, right? You really do
Yeah.
pay a price sometimes as a woman for jumping into relationships or having a baby before you're really solvent.
Well, it's interesting. I think no matter what, whether you have a baby or get married early, it's just learning the skill, going back to that, learning the skill of money. We weren't taught it in school. So I do feel this very much this need to raise women's self-worth and net worth and make them aware of like, this is what you do. These are the steps you can change your life financially. Most of us aren't taught that. So whether or not you have a kid or get married early or do it later in life, those skills all can be learned. And then the mindset of it, that you are worthy of wealth, that you can bring money into your life, that is all within your reach, no matter your circumstances.
I love that. Yes. Because
Um,
we were taught that it was for other people. Like literally my aunt said the rich are different from you and me. And it's not like we were poor, but she just said, the rich, like there somewhere in the stratosphere, are different from you and me, meaning we would never get there and we wouldn't understand, which is absurd. But anyway, oh, and the old
absolutely.
money doesn't grow on trees, right? We would get that a lot too.
Which is so funny because money is actually paper. So I just find this so ironic. And it's
Good one,
literally,
good one.
it's just printed. But yeah, my mother freed us and money enabled her to take a leap. And it's crazy. She had to hide the money though. That's the crazy part, right? She had to
And it
keep it
was
stuff.
still hard. I mean, my God, because she had to pay for two. Oh my God, so crazy. Yeah, and she had
But
to hide the money.
going back to that story, I tell that story not only to emphasize my mother as being a superhero, which I will, now she's going to have to listen to this podcast,
Oh, but she is. She is a
uh,
superhero.
but the fact that that was the moment I became aware that money it's complicated, and in a belief that I still work through is the belief that it's not always there for you, right? Because
Right.
that was the moment it got wiped away. It's like I went from really comfortable to suddenly we can't pay for groceries. And what was interesting is I kind of maybe subconsciously embedded this feeling and that thought in my head. And then as I grew up, what happened was that money would be there for me and I would make lots of it. And then it would suddenly not be there for me. And then I would have these dips. So I call it the feast or famine cycle of lots of money coming my way and then no money. And then lots of money coming my way and no money.
Yeah.
And so what ended up happening was I would hit, I hit a couple financial rock bottoms. And I remember one where it was like actually right around the pandemic time. And I had made all the most money I'd ever made the year before. I mean, it was six figures and I had never made that much before. And then suddenly we were at zero, and I remember being like, okay, so I'm really sick of being on this feast or famine cycle. And I didn't realize how deep it went. It did go back to my childhood, the feeling of security and then insecurity, security and insecurity. And I had one of those, moments again, where I call them the I'm done moments, where I was sitting on the beach. The pandemic had just started. I was struggling financially. I didn't see any prospects in sight. And at this point, I had been kind of worn down by my career already. I was like, all right, I feel really stuck. So I felt stuck in a career I didn't like. I felt broke and I felt broken all at the same time. And I remember sitting on the beach, it was wintertime, and there was a lighthouse in front, like in the distance. And again, I prayed to the universe, God, spirit, whatever you want to call it. And it was like I was looking at the lighthouse and I was like, help, help me stop going through this feast and famine cycle. Help me stop being broke. Help me stop feeling broken and stuck. Help. I need help. I don't ever want to feel broke ever again. And of course, God did not speak back. I heard no voice. And I realized, nobody's coming to save me. I was going to have to take action and change my life. It was either I was going to keep doing what I was doing or I was going to change it. And then that was the moment where I stood up. I literally stood up, drew a line in the sand in front of myself and said, okay, I'm done. This is me telling God, the universe, myself, that I am done living like this and that I will do everything in my power to learn about money and change my life. I want to be rich. I want to be wealthy. And the next 3 years were really rough and I learned everything. I learned so much about money. And now I went from somebody stuck on a beach feeling broken and stuck to I'm somebody who is sharing my money mistakes, my money messes to help other women empower them. And I'm building a 7-figure business slowly but surely. I'm somebody who definitely believes I'm worthy of wealth, that I can build a wealthy business, helping women get wealthy, doing what they love.
It's perfect. I love it. What could be better? And there's also that lovely idea that we can all be wealthy. Like there's that also weird shame kind of, money's dirty. I don't want to talk about money. I don't want to, no, I don't want money. Yeah, you do. You want wealth. You want abundance. It's okay, right? It's okay. The podcast class I took that started all this, Kathy Heller worked a lot with mindset, and she said, I want company here. the Wealthy Woman Club. She goes, I want company. I want all women to feel abundance in their life, not just money, right? Abundance of all sorts. But it's okay to want money. It's okay to be wealthy. It's okay to be generous, and be able to give whoever you want to any charity you want, to be, balanced and happy and wealthy, and yay you, right? Like, and you're teaching other people, like, it's okay.
Yeah, I would say, the desire to want to be wealthy is a human desire because ultimately what you're saying is I desire to have everything I need and want to live up to my fullest potential.
There
That's
you
really
go.
how I interpret wealth. I
I love
interpret
that.
that. And yes, you need the funds to support whatever that is, whether that's
Yeah.
starting a podcast and being able to buy a microphone or, being able to buy a website so you can share what you do. At the end of the day, what I see wealthy as is just having access and resources and having everything you need, everything you desire to just live your life the way that you deeply believe you are destined to live. And I know that most of us deep down know we were destined for more than mediocre, because I do believe everybody has something, a purpose that they can fulfill. And one thing I want to say is don't let your past dictate your future. I could have been the kid or the young woman who still believed that I'm stuck and I'm broken and I have to be paycheck to paycheck and I have to stay like this. I have to let fear keep dictating my life. You can decide I am actually worthy of wealth and I am willing to open myself up to learn about money, to learn the skill and to change my life one step at a time. And that's what I'm doing. Like I help one of my clients pay off $27,000 in debt to get a new home.
That's good.
She was living with her parents with
That's good.
$27,000 in debt with so much
That's
shame
fantastic. Oh,
and feeling like a hot money mess. She had a little boy and a husband, and she was just struggling. And we got to the heart of it. We got to the mindset. We got to the strategy, and I watched her have her "I'm done" moment, right, where she drew the line in the sand, and she did the work. And I think really for anybody out there, the first step is the mindset. It is believing you are worthy of wealth. And for most of us, we've heard so many messages, like you said, that it's the root of all evil or it doesn't grow on trees or there are other people, right? The rich people are other people. Well, it can be
yeah.
you. It can be you. And,
Yeah.
I lead a workshop called Worthy of Wealth. And I want to share something with you, which is, I think, the number one thought that is holding most people back.
Oh, great.
And it is this: it is the belief that you are not enough and that there is not enough. That
Wow.
is, I would say, the one thought, one belief that affects your entire financial life.
That's so
Think
powerful. In many, many ways, a lot of us are struggling with that. Not enough.
100%. Think about if you deeply believed I'm enough, just as I am, how that changes everything. That changes how you spend your money. Right? Because going back to what you said earlier about fear, right? That you had mentioned, Lynn, that fear of, oh, we got to wear deodorant. We got to, women have this fear. And I think that ultimately comes from the belief we're not enough just as we are.
So right.
And I
Not good enough. That's one of the I forget where I saw it, but it was one of the meditations, one of the affirmations that were recommended for, especially for women. Every day just wake up and say, I am enough. I have enough.
Mhm.
The universe will provide. I'm fine the way I am. I'm enough. And it was just sort of radical to me. It's like, yeah, we really don't deep down believe that we are. That's so powerful. Whitney, I think that really is the crux.
It is, I started to realize that is the number one thought that
Yeah.
holds people back
So
because
much comes out of that. You're so right. So much comes out of that.
okay, so the belief that you're not enough, right? If you're walking around thinking you're not enough, then what do? You spend your money on things that'll hopefully help you make you feel enough, right?
Yeah.
So fancy
Yeah.
perfume, the makeup, the hair, I don't know, a car, a house, a
Yep.
huge mansion, because you have to let the whole entire universe know that you're enough.
See, I'm enough. Yeah. And also for me, it was apologizing very often, sort of always being sorry and making up to people and, because I'm just not good enough, right? When I was younger, I was so wimpy. I was just always, you know, giving in to other people and trying to, fit in and apologizing way too much. I think a lot of women apologize way too much
I agree.
for stuff they didn't even do.
We're sorry for our even ourselves existing. I'm
Are
sorry.
existing.
I'm sorry my legs are on the subway a little, they actually did a
Yeah. Oh
study
yeah.
where men take up more space on the
And
subway,
spread, right?
but we have to be small. So I think that is part of like teaching women that they are worthy of wealth, is saying I am enough. Like if I can teach one single thing to women everywhere, it's you are enough just as you are right now. You have enough to do whatever you're wanting to do right now. There are resources in front of you. Maybe you haven't noticed them yet because you're so focused on the lack that
Yeah.
you
Oh,
begin to
that's so
shift
true.
that. When you begin to shift to there is enough, everything I need is right in front of me, I'm enough, you begin to see opportunities and resources that were always in front of you.
That you didn't see before. And I've also heard that the universe will give you whatever you're focusing on. So if you're focusing on lack, if you're living in lack and focusing on lack and believing that's your reality, you're going to get more lack
Yeah.
because that's all the universe knows how to do, or whatever, universe or higher self or whatever. I even heard something recently that kind of flipped me out the way this was said. It was somebody said, I don't want, how did they say it? I want more money. I want more money. And it was a channeled message, but it's a very fun channeler. And he said, if you say, I want more money, the universe will always keep you in that state. It will make it true. You will always want more money. You have to say, I'm grateful for having abundance. I'm grateful for having more money. You have to be in that space. Like you said, you have to get out of the stuck and start seeing more. So if you say you want more money or someday or what, you're making that distance between you and the money, there's a spiritual, like, sort of piece to this where you're going to just continue that wanting instead of having, like right now in the present. And I was like, well, that's weird, but on some level it just rang true to me.
Oh, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I think one thing that I do is help people a lot with their mindset, because you're carrying just so many old beliefs and limiting beliefs. And if you've been broke and struggling financially for a long time, and not necessarily broke, maybe you're doing pretty all right, but you could, you have bigger dreams for yourself, or it's just always a struggle. Or, it's just hard. Like if money's just hard for you, there are some thoughts that you are having that are causing you to feel that way. And that's where the money mindset part of it comes into it. It's such a huge part of it. What are you thinking? What your thoughts have led you here. So what are
What
you thinking?
beliefs are you holding? Right. That's
Yes.
so crucial. That's so important. So you get down to the brass tacks, and I love that. I love that about what you do. So is there anything else that you'd like to share with us? And make sure that I'm going to put in the show notes how to get in touch with you, but can you tell us how to get in touch with you or anything you'd like our listeners to
Yeah.
know?
So I guess the biggest takeaway is I hope that whoever's listening can remind themselves that they are enough exactly where they are, that I'm enough. And even just saying that to yourself over and over again as often as possible will begin to shift something inside of you. So I would say that's one of the biggest takeaways that I hope that people carry with them. And yeah, they can find me on my website, whitneyannellis.com, and with an E. So WHITNEY, ANNE Ellis, ELLIS.com. I'm also on Instagram under the same name, Whitney and Ellis. And yeah, I'm running a Worthy of Wealth workshop. It'll always be available. If you miss the date to join, there'll be replay opportunities. And it's really about upgrading your mindset, because that is the first step in money transformation. Because even when you do like the good money habits and you work on it and they don't stick, part of the problem is your mindset. So you got to get the
There's,
mindset in sync with the strategy and the tactics of getting your financial shit together, as I like to say, so that
yeah.
you can fund your dreams and worry less and do whatever you can dream up, because can be amazing. And the moment you decide you're done living it, if you're unhappy in your life, that is the moment that you get to step into transformation. So
I think you're going to inspire tons of people when they hear this. I can't thank you enough for sharing. This is great info.
thank you so much, Lynn, for having me. It was a joy. And I'm so glad we met in
Yeah, me
person.
too. Me too.